right, thank you. And where am I supposed to look?
Got one over there.
Okay.
Wherever you want to look.
Welcome, everyone. This is, Wednesday, March 11th, and this is the first meeting in 2026 of the City Council's Public Health and Safety Committee. And with that, we will do some introductions and then start out with elections of chair before we move on. There is an agenda scheduled, and we'll move through it the best we can. With that, introductions of committee members. I'm the carryover chair, Karen Hiller from District 1.
Michelle Bradbury from District 7.
Christina Valdivia, Alpha District 2.
Marcus Miller, District 6.
Okay, thank you. With that, let's loop around again. Well, we'll wait till we get into changing our culture. The first order of business is to elect the chair for 2026. So,
I nominate Karen Hiller.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded. I am willing to do that. I came back to try and finish this thing. Any other nominations? With that, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Thank you. All right, we'll move right along. Oh, also though, Councilman David Banks is here.
Yeah.
He served last year. Just introduce yourself, I guess.
Well, David Banks representing District 4.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Moving on into what we have already preset on the agenda. For those who are not familiar, the 5-year initiative, Changing Our Culture of Property Maintenance, was developed through the Property Maintenance Code Compliance Department and has been a primary focus of this committee for the last 4 years. This is year 5 of that initiative, and we want to move forward ideally and get all the parts that we've conceived of moving, including the things that have changed because we've learned lessons from the past and trying things and so on, as well as to move forward so that ultimately by the end of this year, we're able to make any policy changes that are lingering or that we've learned through the course of the year in order to set the template for future, in a perfect world anyway, for the any specific changes and language in the property maintenance code itself, the city's administrative procedures for enforcing that code, the education and community-wide engagement initiatives that are going on, so that, and that's kind of the functional within that, checking the data, looking at the first 4 initiatives that we had through Changing Our Culture of Property Maintenance and see how we're doing. So the way I've started the year anyway, was set up to be a primary initiative of this group, particularly because we have 2 brand new board members. And so we need to spend, if we're going to make good evaluations and decisions policy-wise and initiative-wise, everybody needs to be fully on board with some depth in terms of what we are doing and have been doing. So the thought was that today would be an overview. If you looked at the handouts and people who got it just in the mail or had notebooks at a tentative schedule for the year, the idea was to be able to pick up, do an overview here. We do have an additional policy issue that John Chardon brought us from the department kind of last minute that I think is okay to send through right now. Through the rest of the year to have 6 months worth of separating some of the focal points like renters, like homeowners, like vacant properties, to really be able to spend time on them because each one is quite complex. Over the course of the year, do updates as needed with their hot issues or things that are going on, of course, with each of those monthly, but expect to meet monthly and do that so spend about 6 months doing that so that by October, November, December, we can pull that all together and work on that, any policy changes, templates for future. So we'll look at that again for your affirmation, not right now, but after we've kind of talked through the overview. To get started on the CoCPM piece, I want to do a set of introductions again. First, of the council members that are on the committee, in terms of what you see, if anything, and Dan, you can, well, we're going to be talking to people. Let's leave it for a minute. What from your district number, experiences or thoughts that you've had about, or name your district number, and then talk about issues for property maintenance or vacant properties that have come to your attention, whether it's in your district or citywide. So we've kind of done a little bit of get to know you around the table to get started with this work. Marcus, can we start with you just in case something happens?
That's a good call, because I'm just about to get off here. It's about to start. So I would say for District 6, a lot of the things that I hear is not about necessarily vacant properties, it's about blighted properties. The vast majority of my district is pretty good about its property maintenance, but we do have spots where we have some issues with folks coming into compliance. In the first 2 years of this term, I have definitely reached out to those that have had some issues and tried to get neighbors to be neighborly so that we're not turning each other in just to be vindictive. I know neighbors can have different issues with each other, but I try not to get in the middle of that stuff and just try to get to the fact and try to make sure that whatever that the property owners have and their rights are respected, and we're not using the government and using code compliance as a weapon to get our neighbors back for whatever issues they have. So I've been very focused on making sure that those things aren't happening in District 6 and making sure that our homes to compliance as much as possible. Those are things that I hear.
Thank you. That's great. And it aligns certainly with changing our culture, which is, people helping themselves and each other rather than relying on government, like you say. So that's great. Councilwoman Bradbury?
Thank you. Well, I think probably for District 7, for the most part, there aren't as many probably property maintenance issues in the district. However, being new, I haven't heard from citizens directly about any ongoing issues or any concerns. So I would certainly hope that I would hear something from my constituents if there were ongoing issues. So my goal right now is to kind of contribute what I can to the committee for the best outcomes we can for the entire city.
That's great. Appreciate that. One of the things we talk about as council members is that we all wear two hats. One is for our district and one is for the city. Mm-hmm. And understanding those different departments matters. Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala?
Well, the district has a number of issues, and, they're still ongoing. I think after being gone for 3 months and, coming back, I have continued deep concerns about North Topeka and the level of, single-family properties and just the multiple code violations that are seen. And I don't know, I think I may have heard something where we have a housing navigator now. I'm not sure if that's true, but we need to come up with a good formula that is going to be able to become more assertive and proactive with these neighbors. But because we know that they're on the lower end of the income scale, we don't want to be punitive and drag them into court. But yet, as I drove through North Topeka this past weekend, the problems are just, they look worse instead of better. The issue nations, and I see more of those in Oakland that are growing and growing. the homelessness crisis that we have is obviously still a crisis. And working for almost 5 years to get the unsheltered as humanely removed from the river, the Kansas River banks there by the fields next to Little Russia, took a huge amount of effort, not only by me, but by numerous constituents that also live in this area, some of them poverty-stricken, some of them barely making ends meet, and could not, there's no way that I could justify to them that it was okay what was happening along the river with feces going into the river with total disregard for cleanup, et cetera, when they were being hit, whether they were homeowners or, rental properties, it doesn't matter. They were being hit. And it's really hard to try to justify that inequity. So, the homeless population in the district has moved into more unseen areas further down the river. Sorry, that's my phone's, say north. But I want to see that everything, that we're doing here and how hard everybody has worked as really laying the groundwork for possibilities of change. We know that we are continuing to have fires in all of our districts, the loss of life. We know that we are having an epic proportion of slumlord problems in multifamily dwellings. I'm not talking about single-family dwellings, and so I will push and push and push for the rental registry as one small way to help, and there is growing support on council for it. And I just think that there is such good work being done at this committee level, but somehow I think because we are in our 5th year and it's still so new, it's really hard sometimes to see what has really changed when you're in a district like mine, which is one of the lower numbered districts and, considered one of the underserved districts. That's it.
Thank you. Well, I represent District 1, and so to keep it kind of short, what she said, I think I've had 5 fires, including fatalities, in my district in the last 3 weeks. Lots of issues, discovering that some of the multifamily properties where those fires occurred were severely run down. As convener for this initiative, as well as committee chair, I've been so totally immersed in trying to get this stuff put together so we can move it forward, move each of the pieces forward in an equitable but effective way. I may just stop short of saying much more. What we see is a mix of homeowners and renters block by block in Central, and it varies by district, it varies by subsection of the district. The homeowner issues that people have mentioned are there. The homeless issues are there. I am hopeful that we can all focus, divvy up. We're going to introduce some of the staff that's here in a minute. This initiative was set up to be interdepartmental, which is very courageous and very different and can be difficult even as people are working hard. Our staff has worked really hard from every single department that's represented in our team to make this happen. But when you have changes of issues, when you have change of software, when you have all these things happen, it really is challenging to keep it moving. So I want to thank you all. Staff that's here, in no particular order, introduce yourselves, please.
Good afternoon. I'm Dan Garrett, the Director of Communications for the city.
Thank you. And also our tech man.
Yes.
Nicole.
Nicole Stovall. I am the Changing Our Culture Property Maintenance Program Administrator and software person right now for
Variant
code.
software. Leah.
Hello, I'm Leah Bowling. I am the Economic Development Director for the City of Topeka.
And we'll talk about her a little more as we move along. I didn't realize I was making you come up, but I guess we have to do that.
Yeah, I guess I'll come up, I'll take Leah's spot. So Avery Moore, Assistant City Manager for Public Safety.
And he has been assigned to be the lead from the city management team over this initiative. Welcome, welcome, and thank you.
Thank you.
And then John Chardine should be here. He's the Director of Property Maintenance within the next minute or two.
Okay.
So.
I'm Brandy Roy Bachman. I'm from the legal department.
And she's migrated her way to being part of our team, right? Thank you so much. Our lead team on this, just so everybody knows, is John Chardine, Star Quality, Nicole Stovall, Avery Moore, and me at this point. So we're the ones that are collaborating to try and keep all of this put together and pushed out. We've got just a handful of guests. If you would, some of you have been regulars to contribute to this before, if you don't mind, and just from where you are, if you just shout out your name and why you're interested.
Okay, I'm Steve Vogel, I'm the president of the Shawnee County Landlords
We
Association.
just did
Okay.
introductions, so we haven't gotten into
Roger Barnhart, I'm the division manager for community health outreach and planning for the Shawnee County.
Great.
And I have extensive history under fair housing and rental and for health and social services and housing services for homeless.
Great. Thank you.
Danielle Twemlow, community member.
That was Danielle Twemlow, if people couldn't hear it.
I'm Braden Kerwick. I'm the Vice President of the Shawnee County Young Dems and the elected precinct committee person of Ward 9, Precinct 3, and a member of the Topeka Tenants.
All right, Brandon Kerwick.
Stacy Saldana Olson with the Topeka Capital Journal.
Thanks for being here. And
Hi, I'm Daisy, just a community advocate.
Daisy Curry, community advocate. Thanks everybody for coming. Let's roll here, Dan.
You want that PowerPoint?
Yes, please. And John, now that you're here, we'll get started. Next slide, please. I think we've covered that. And John, if you would take the next one and just, I stole this from one of your slides anyway.
Oh. Okay. What does a property maintenance unit do? So we enforce our property maintenance codes, which we adopted from the International Property Maintenance. And so we protect the public health and safety, we preserve the neighborhood stability, support fairness and accountability, and save city resources if we do it correctly. Provide a clear, legal, defensible standards and encourage investment and redevelopment. So what we found out is that after we enforce our codes, if we don't have a responsible property owner, we apply those the money that we spent to taxes. And so if we kept that up in a long term, in a long run, the properties would accumulate so much money on it that's not going to be attractive to investors, right? So we have to locate a reasonable, responsible property owner, and that's what we try to do. Next slide, please.
Yeah, and I'll pick it up from there.
Okay.
We'll trade back to you. On the goals of the Changing Our Cultural Property Maintenance Initiative, just to recap, I mentioned earlier, overall, the idea was to have people help themselves and each other, minimizing the need for city intervention at all. The four identified, you've got a document in the back of your book that actually has the the initiative and its guiding principles in it. The 4 sub-goals under it were to reduce substandard structures by 50% in 5 years, to reduce deterioration in vacant structures, to reduce the revenue expense gap on abatement cases by 50%, to John's point about money racking up and also all of us spending all this money to do enforcement in the first place. And last, to improve the appearance of community through management of uncultivated and overgrown vegetation, such that the average visitor would rate Topeka's property appearance on at least a 7 on a scale of 10. Those were structured that way to fit in with an outcomes and data measurable process at some point. What we have found is that over these years, we've been challenged with just kind of getting it right. So, oh no, I'm going to find out
Those
that
definitely were
left my notes.
established to, like, during the beginning when we were establishing, like, our online platforms for, like, See, Click, Fix, and figuring out how to make that the easiest. So there has been a little bit of some question now, but taking a look at those goals, that those were a really good goal, I think, to set back 5 years ago. But now, realistically, when we have seen the ease of being able to just See, Click, Fix, we've realized that there are a lot more of those that we are doing, which then raises, we almost created a little bit of a monster, because now it's easy to identify a lot of those problems and send us out. But then that also raises our potential for abatements, potential for costs. So not only have we made it easier, but then trying to reduce that as well has kind of been a little bit of a challenge. And then taking a look too, I know we had talked about potentially what would that look like of naming what substandard structure means. We'd kind of come to the conclusion that substandard in a legal definition and defense would be anything that has a violation, whether that be a small violation or kind of more of a serious violation, it still would be considered substandard. So now that we have this rise in influx of writing up a lot of these violations, was that a realistic goal?
Right.
You know, now looking back 5 years, so.
Yeah, and she's raising some good points in that what we've figured out is that we really, first and foremost, again, the staff has done a great job, but nonetheless, we need to pay attention to that deep dive attention, that the reason, the whole thing that we're building this initiative about is the code itself and its enforcement. So that policy and then how we're addressing it, and what we have observed is we need to be really clear in the code and what demands there are of we make of residents and owners. And council members have talked about it in some different ways. So we need to be, as we're looking at it again this year, conscientious about what's covered and what's not. What is life safety and what's not? So what's enough to say you can't occupy a unit? What's enough to say, no, you need to fix this sometime really soon, depending on whether it's occupied or not? And then what's maybe so minor it shouldn't be in there if we were looking at all those pieces. We say we're inspecting the same in each class, renter, occupied, homeowner, and vacant property, depending on what we're looking at, exterior premises and so on. Are we really? Are we being that consistent, or do we need to be? The fines and fee system that we developed, that legal really put together at the beginning, the first year, sounded really good, and it had some stepped penalties and so on, but for repeat offenders, but then we didn't see the assessments being made and the collections coming in, and it turned out with the technicalities that if you weren't convicted in the municipal court, then you weren't an offender, so you weren't a repeat offender when you did it again. So we just had work to do to work on language and process. Getting in to inspect substandard rentals was a big deal, and we'll talk about that some more today. But the bottom line was that we realized that building trust, is probably the most important. trust in the system, and trust in the individuals that were coming. And that's despite all the hard work that John has done with his people to be available, be resources, not just the inspector, and so on. And for vacant properties, lots of issues, including a challenge to ourselves about whether to require the outside to fully meet code, for instance. But then also whether to leave somebody alone, whatever the property status was it a rental, a homeowner, or has it been vacant for a while? Do we leave them alone if as long as it's secure and okay on the outside? Or do we keep pushing for getting repairs done? And then really people have worked on creative outreach. So lots of things that have happened so far.
Oh, you did say outreach. I know that Christina had talked about that she had heard that we had a housing navigator. Monique
Yes.
has taken that on and has switched a little bit of that role, renamed that into the community navigator.
Mhm.
So that position does exist. I meant to mentally note that until you said outreach, it didn't pop back up into my head. So that is something that we do have that's out there, that's a resource, just as a throwback to what she had said earlier.
Good point. And
So, Chair,
yes,
so since you have quite a lengthy agenda and there's still some things that I feel we need to talk about, can we put talking more about this navigator and what exactly its duties are, and it's divided between two departments in the next meeting?
sure. But there, because you're right.
I think that's a hole that when we left it, it was not beneficial. So I would like to hear the positive aspect of having one back.
Absolutely, and we can talk about not only the community navigator, but there are still people whose title is housing navigator in the housing division as well. And so to get that straight and who's doing what, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Leo Hope is the person who has filled that position and now named community navigator.
Understood.
As well, just so that it's out there.
Mhm. Let's go ahead and move forward into the 2026. Oh, let me just walk you through the notebooks, those who are on the council. What you've got is the on the top you've got the agenda for today. Then the 2026 action plan, which we'll touch on in a minute, is the next attachment. And what you've got is 15 pages of much more detail. We will touch on 3 pages of that today, just some highlights out of that, and encourage all of you and those who are guests as well and other staff to read through all of that. Then we have a tentative schedule in the third tab of what the committee meetings and the topics would be. Then we have Dan's draft of, and we'll get back to that, Dan's draft of the major events calendar, so our communications and events, so on. Then we have, the fourth tab will be our action item that John has brought forth on notices. In the back, behind that, without tabs, and we can get tabs for you, but is the changing our culture of property maintenance, just a front and back 2-pager, the initiative itself, so you know it's there and where you can find it. Then the next set is the work Nicole has done on performance measures. So far, these are 2025 year to date, or full year. Then we also, because of recent action by the council, have taken over. Property maintenance staff now has pretty much 100% responsibility for on-street vehicle ticketing. And so we've added the different types of vehicle cases and where you can find it in the city code here. And then the last 50 pages or something like that is the property maintenance code itself, the current one. It was passed in December. It was built on the 2024 International Property Maintenance Code with all the local things that everybody has to put in there and some customizing that the city has had in the past. We adopted it without really much input or questions, though we asked for a lot of it.
We did.
But this is a pretty big code. It's pretty detailed, so we really do want people to know it's there and to make reference to it when things come up, and certainly make pencil and either send in notes or bring them to our meetings and so on, because we want to make sure it's what we need and it's what the best is. And with that, back up to the front, Nicole is the person who pulled this action plan out of our big fat detailed plan, and also has the tech part, management part in there. So, Nicole?
Yeah, this is kind of more of like an overall view of what it is that we'd really like to accomplish for this this year, as well as just kind of everything that had been listed out that either had been started or hadn't been started. It includes our website updates. You probably know, if you've gone to the City of Topeka's website, that has completely changed. So we had kind of revamped what the Changing Our Culture of Property Maintenance page looked like. And we're continuing to kind of sync some of those pages, including the overall property maintenance page, and then just getting those different links and things like that synced across all of those platforms to make sure that all of our information was current and available, not only when you come to actually the city as far as our different departments, but online. So those website changes. That next section includes all of the media events outreach that's going to be happening. There was a major document that Dan Garrett had created that council members have that's more detailed. This is a little bit more of an overview, which talks about monthly engagement. So I think it's twice a month that we would be posting on like social media, so like Facebook, Twitter, things like that. But then there's some outreach events that we're doing. So we have Coffee with Code that's going to be happening, I think, 4 times this year. We've got things like Yard of the Month again. We'll be participating in National Night Out, putting materials in the water bill, like those mailers that talks about code. So a lot of those outreach things are listed in there. Next we'll have our major thing that's happening is our software transition, which right now we use MyGov. A lot of other departments within the city, as the Topeka Together project has been moving towards the Tyler software. So that included code as far as property maintenance. And so that is something that we have tried to transition, and working through all of our software and making sure that we were in sync with other departments as well. So like permits or zoning, I know Megan was on earlier, trying to sync some of our data and what we have in Tyler, matching kind of the same standards and things that are happening cross-departmentally, and being able to share that data with each other as well as creating another means for the citizen to submit a complaint or a violation through that Tyler software. So that is a large undertaking. I'm participating in that, doing that, as well as Changing Our Culture. So depending on when you see me, it'll be one of those hats typically that I'm wearing. Next, we've got a focus on our data inventories. So participating with Dylan Smith and his team as far as the fire marshal, going and taking a look at multifamily units. So making sure that we are hitting each one of those. I think, was that yearly that we had decided for us that we were going to try to accomplish taking a look at those, or?
It was discussed, and we decided yearly would be a goal. Mm-hmm. But as we do this, as we progress, we discover more and more. Right. Of the multi. So yearly would not be a goal any longer, would probably be on a 2 or 3 year plan. I think we are up to a total of 135 multi-family complexes at this time.
Which would be 5 or more units. The fire department does I think 8 or more with their.
We've settled on 5.
Yeah, but we had settled, I think, on 5 as far as going and doing those inspections. We had originally previously done that in 2024, lost that person as far as internally with our staff for the 25 year, so that wasn't feasible. And then we've kind of transitioned into doing kind of group inspections with all of our inspectors going and taking a look at one property at a time. So we had just started that within this year. I think we had mentioned with Carrie taking a look at government-assisted housing inspections, compiling a list, and I believe that were like HUD funded, and there were some other, I think, lists that she was potentially going to be kind of compiling to take a look at as far as different entities that do those inspections, and kind of putting a lot of that data into one pool so that we could kind of take a look as far as what kind of rotation, how things get looked at, what were the numbers, what was their scores kind of at the end of the day.
For Chair, can I get in that piece for a little bit? Again, I didn't know that this was, and if it was told in the emails, I obviously didn't read that part. I didn't know that this hour-and-a-half meeting was specifically going to be to train the new board committee members. But again, I've been gone for 90 days, so I'm gonna want to interject here when it comes to this list that you're talking about with HUD and then like with KHRC, et cetera. I think again, we touched on this briefly last night with the experience that we had with Timberley Apartments. And I think that we really need to be assertive and proactive when it comes to, especially as these LIHTC credits start phasing out, we're going to need to get some kind of understanding as far as what, even if our lobbyist helps with this, what KHRC's true responsibilities really are. Once that is determined, and then getting, because I think there is obviously, like we said, some type of code inspection that they're supposed to do if there's a problem. Again, I said, I think Braxton talked ahead of himself. I don't know that they do annual inspections. But I think that what we do need to come to some kind of understanding is how we can utilize the arm of KHRC in a way that we have not been able to utilize it because they dropped the ball so many times. And I don't know if that can be helped along with our lobbyists as part of our legislative agenda, but also with the Shawnee County, with the Shawnee, the Shawnee County delegation. Because to me, if we don't get a handle on this, especially as these LIHTCs start phasing out, in my opinion, we're going to find ourselves even more overwhelmed than we really are. So, we have to get a sense of where this is, and I don't know if you agree with that, but, and then the other part of this is the rental registry. I see that you have on page, when I was reading it somewhere on page 10, whatever. I have a draft that I was tentatively working with Carrie about a pilot program proposal for multifamily housing dwelling. I was talking about this with the mayor this morning, and I started talking with Councilman Kell about this, and they're all gung-ho for seeing something start sooner rather than later. With all of the information and all of the things that this committee is taking on to itself, if I have to, I can move it out, or I will just take this up on my own because with the mayor's help, because I believe that's how important this rental registry is. And I don't want it to get lost in the 2026 shuffle. So I'm just throwing both of those out there, and then we can take it up at an additional meeting. But I want that on the record. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I'm going to pick up on a couple of those things in the detail part that follows. But we will cover. We wanted to make sure we did the education now about the initiatives that we have, because part of, I'll just jump ahead a little bit, even you're probably going to hit it. We're dropping the vacant property registry because it was difficult to get anybody signed up, and it wasn't valuable. It didn't serve the purpose, which was the idea for it, to be able to find the right person at the right time if something happened. And we've looked at that and have talked about it before. It's the same challenge with the rental registry. What you do have on here is the government inventory, which Carrie said she would take care of. That's all, anything that's got HUD money in it, which your work on Timberley pointed up. And so simply to be, and Carrie Higgins from Housing said she would take care of that, making sure that we gathered. Those reports are absolutely all HUD-assisted property, whether it's public housing, project-based Section 8, or Section 8 vouchers of any sort. Those, HUD does the inspections on the complexes, and the Topeka Housing Authority and our own housing staff do the inspections annually on the vouchers. One of the things we'd run into as a problem was that if tenants said they didn't want anybody to come in, they couldn't. But in any of those HUD-assisted projects, there is an agreement in their lease that they would allow an annual inspection. So looking at what the problems were and why we started talking about those kinds of things, it looked like that was major. We do need to add to that the double check with KHRC and whether there are unit type inspections with the LIHTC projects, low income housing tax credits for those who missed that. We also developed the police, the fire and code inspection units. Really started working on it more than 2 years ago, with the idea that if between fire and code, either together or individually, we were stopping by, and the way it's set up, John, is fire is supposed to go out once a year anyway if there are interior entrances from the building into people's apartments, once a year. And then
we are just doing an exterior inspection and then any of the common areas.
Correct. But we added in our vision any multi-unit and have settled on 5 or more so that you could at least get to the outside, view it, make contact with, leave information about property maintenance code and resources at each door. And so that's kind of hiccuped along. We've now changed the person who's head of it at fire, but the way it's set right now is to do that affirmative outreach to multifamily, defined again as 5 or more rental properties in the whole city. Exterior entrance once every 3 years, once a year if there have been problems. Mm-hmm. And then interior entrance, the annual, that's the fire routine. With those two together, and possibly some additional training about, how to visit with people that walk up when you're on the property and building trust. If those two together in terms of checking those units and making contact, it appeared that done right, those could handle it in terms of an inventory of who owned properties and how to get hold of them and whether they had code compliance history, whether people were just concerned about it or whether they were part of the testimony from the early Topeka tenants input of people wanting to be able to check when they were considering basically like checking references on a property or an owner to see if they'd had code violations. And we realized that we already had that. We simply hadn't publicized it very much. And so that's on our website today in terms of being able to find out who the owner is and be able to check. And with that, you find out how many properties they have. Then you go into the city's website and can find the information on any property if there is history. The other piece we looked at was if what we wanted was real-time information about who to contact, who owned it, what was up on that particular property, that you would never get that out of a registry that was filled out once a year or so, but instead have worked out with this new software that Nicole is working on, that everybody in the city is working on. Already an interdepartmental commitment between police, fire, and property maintenance, so that whenever anybody from any of those 3 departments needed to go out to a property, they would be able to access on their way to out the door or before they left, if there was any history from any of those 3 departments on that property. And if so, enough information from those records so you could see, was it a neighbor who turned them in? Was it a neighbor who knew the grandkids that owned the property, that's who you needed to call because mom's in a nursing home or whatever it is, was that it appeared that working on that 3-level communication system would give us the best possible current information, point in time, if anybody needed to try and find an owner or wanted to know what they were walking into in a certain property. So those things developed over the course of the last year. They are on the 2026 work plan to get them, the final, with all the software that's going on, get them all settled and tested, because it seemed like that would achieve the objectives without adding any staff, without adding any bureaucracy, and hopefully saving a lot of money and time on the part of community.
Sure.
Yeah.
So with all of that you just said, are you saying that you're not supportive of a rental registry?
Personally, I am supportive of of identifying what it is we needed and making sure we get it. And if what we needed was affirmative education and contact about both property maintenance, rules and regulations, as well as rental protections, I want to make sure that is. Nicole skipped, HCCI is on deck for 10 tenant landlord workshops this year, according to Carrie. And also John's got code presence at the NIAs as well. So the issue of if what we want is education, we want people to be confident, we want them to know, and we want ourselves to have done some sort of affirmative effort to find out. That's what got built over the course of last year, as well as being able to...
I hear what you're saying, and I applaud the efforts about the interconnectedness with the software and having all of that at the same time accessible, which we should have done years and years ago, like we had talked about years and years ago, like the VA does. And I'm not going to say that I have confidence that it's going to be done this year. The bottom line is that the rental registry works in a number of municipalities across the country. The bottom line is that I have been working with others to start a very rough draft on a pilot for multifamily. So all of the terror that's coming from single-family rental property owners, this is not the focus on them, because we know where the issue is. The issue is in multifamily dwellings. So with the tenor that's coming from the governing body, people that I am talking to, in addition, adding that with the mayor and their deep, deep concerns about the continued issues that we're having, I'm not of the mindset to wait. So if these have to be on 2 different tracks, then they have to be on 2 different tracks. Because my legislative push with my colleagues, the colleagues, some of them here, some of them not, is going to be to push for this rental registry. And the added part of that, Chair, is that the people that live in these properties are wanting it, and they're not dumb. They've done their research. So I just want to be clear, where we're at. I'm not a rental property owner. I don't know if anybody on the committee is, but I'm not a rental property owner. I can see the benefit, of it without it coming down at all harsh on, the single family rentals, the mom and pop that have 40 or 50 properties. That's not what this goal is. The goal is the multifamily properties. So I just wanted clarification on that and for that to be on the record. Thank you.
Thanks. And I just think for anything that is the committee's worked on already, or if somebody thinks that that's not good enough and it won't cover it, the challenge that people gave the city manager actually when he proposed it was, okay, think it through, because he's still interested in working on it, but think it through. What are we trying to accomplish? How will this accomplish more than we already have in place? And how much would it cost to do this extra? Can it be done with existing staff, or what would it take to get this done? And what would those extra processes be? Would it be just sending bills and collecting fees, or would it be advancing safety and affordability? So that would be the challenge, just like with any other proposal. So
Right,
definitely.
and I get that. And as we face the challenge of the loss of life, as we face the challenge with neighborhoods continuing to have fires that are decimating certain parts of neighborhoods. So if, we do, on one hand, what the cost for the human infrastructure, what the cost for the failing and flailing infrastructure and the slumlords and all of this, the bad landlords, and then we have over here what we're trying to accomplish with the rental registry. And I had told you in an email that I was going to push to have people come that were supportive of this. And I know that this is a long meeting. I know that there's a lot to talk about. But I also think that folks that are here to talk about that rental registry that have taken the time off to come to an afternoon meeting should be given the time to talk about this. Thank you.
And I don't think we had explored a whole lot into that. We had seen a couple, I think maybe one draft several months ago, and it was more so just like the beginning ideas of that. And so being able to have somebody who's doing the work and taking a look, and really deep diving into that, I don't think that there's any necessarily like harm in exploring that to its fullest potential. It doesn't necessarily mean just because we explore all the way to the end that it's a guaranteed thing. But if we get to the end of that exploring and realize, yes, this is something that's going to be beneficial for us, our city, for the people that live here, then I don't think that there would be really anybody at the table that would say, no, this isn't worth, pursuing. Just because we have an idea of something doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to happen. But that's what, you guys are the experts in that, being able to take a look and saying, how can I pursue this to its fullest? What does that look like? Can it benefit not only the hat that you wear for my district, but for the city as a whole? So I don't think that we really...
I don't profess, Nicole, to be an expert in any of this. What I do know is I've been working, just very gradually with Carrie and people in community.
Mm-hmm.
And I also know how deeply important it is to work with people in community that have common sense and that want things, as renters and protections. So, that's really as far as I can go with that. I'm no expert though.
Well, and I'm going to have to stop it right now because we really did want to get this orientation done, and we had talked a little bit about making sure.
I do have a question.
Okay.
New coming on to this committee and not having all the background. Just very briefly, can somebody inform me of the similarities and the differences between these two lists that we're talking about, the registry and what you're...
So there's the rental registry, and then there's a vacant property registration.
Right.
So vacant property is simply a vacant property that's per ordinance right now where they have to register. Are you talking about the data inventory where it says
yes,
rental?
because Karen just mentioned that the vacant housing registry was dropped, so...
So vacant housing is one. This rental properties fire investigation is multifamily places. We wouldn't expect necessarily one owner to live in somewhere that has 5 units. So we can pretty much assume that these are going to be rental properties. These are apartments. These are, multi-units. This is essentially just going in and taking a look at that exterior, doing an exterior inspection, and then taking a look if it has any sort of common area. Fire already does that on a yearly to 3 yearly basis as far as what quarter that they are in. They do school inspections, they do apartment inspections, they do churches. And so we are just partnering with them to go in and take a look at the exterior and then that common area. So this is just putting together a list. We really don't necessarily know, other than from the ones that they have inspected before, or what Kansas has, I think, listed as a rental property. And so there could be stuff that's zoned as, what, like I think it's an R1 that somebody has converted into a multi-unit and has made 3 different apartments. So when we're taking a look at those, we're creating that inventory of what are 5 or more units that we know of here in the city. As far as the rental registration, I don't know if Christina, if you want to say how that is
Well, I just think we
different
need to
than,
get through the
or
rest of this agenda.
Well, I really need my question answered so I
Okay.
understand what's happening.
Okay. So
Yeah, it is an orientation.
Yep.
You know, what I can do is I can copy this, or I'll see if Carrie has a copy. It's probably about 16 pages long. It uses models from other cities as a pilot program, a 24-month phase 1 implementation, and it based on what Cedar Rapids has done in other cities. It provides the elements, it provides how it will be structured as far as the tiers, possible incentives for single-family housing after the 2-year period. So it really is quite compact, but I can definitely get copies out to everybody. Carrie wasn't able to attend the meeting today, but I planned on touching base with her later this afternoon. I can certainly get this out, though.
Yeah, I think my question also is more along the lines of trying to wrap my head around if both of these are trying to get to the same place or not.
Exactly. And I think.
And that's what I'm trying to understand with this and what those similarities are and what those differences are.
from my understanding, I didn't think that we could require an inspection, even though we were saying, hey, we are requiring you to register the property. I didn't believe at the time, or at least now, that we could require an inspection. And so that, I think, was just more so registering the property. And then, like she said, that there are more like incentives, things as far as putting it on that list. Ours was taking a look at the exterior, doing that inspection, and then those common areas. Those are the only ones we were legally allowed to do.
Mhm.
As far as interior, we were posting notification on any of those doors to say, hey, you have the right to an interior inspection. We can't come in unless you allow us to, or give us that permission.
Okay.
Yeah, and so, again, identifying what it is we're trying to do, and then seeing what strategy will work, is with anything, really. But certainly with that one. And again, the tech is letting us get a lot more information than we used to be able to get very easily, right? Go ahead.
So for department promotional education material, that's just kind of a list of resource guides, things that we're creating at those different department levels. Spanish translations, neighborhood profiles that are highlighting each of those different neighborhood in the different districts. Moving right along, legal ordinance creation. These are some of the legal challenges, things that we're hoping to maybe shift, transition, create. So like we had talked about, proposing the drop of that vacant registry, reviewing definitions and interpretations. Like when we had talked about substandard, what does that really look like? What does that mean? We were kind of figuring out that there were some different definitions of things, how we were interpreting. And then reviewing things like the success of the LLC and repeat offender strategy. Karen had mentioned that earlier, as far as how do you get to be a repeat offender? How does one get to be convicted? We realize there are two different, there's the administrative side on ours as well as the criminal side, and making sure that people are aware of both of those. And then there is the PMU code administration. So this is kind of like our department enter within what we're doing. Asking all of our inspectors to train and certify in code within 18 months. That institutionalized fire PMU reach out program on that fixed rotation, that was under that data inventory. Revising all of our letters, all of our layouts when it comes to all of our notification while we're doing this software transition. We've taken a look at all of our workflows, making sure that we don't have maybe unnecessary steps or steps that we want to make sure are listed in there, that we're doing. We've evaluated a lot of our fines and fees, like I said, for that administrative and on that criminal side, and making sure that we're syncing that up. And as well, right under that, it kind of goes with it, department training. So onboarding, making sure that we are creating materials that set clear standards for what it is that we expect. We're going to be doing a lot of software training when those Tyler programs go live. And then we've started implementing weekly training and case evaluation. So getting all of our inspectors in one room for, I think it's 2 hours or an hour at least a week, taking a look at cases that maybe have common issues, things that are outliers, to say, how did we handle this? Could we have handled this better in any other areas? Suggestions, making sure that we're synced up so that we are providing that same level of expectation across the board, no matter what district we're in and what inspector you have. We've got our performance data, which was what was compiled in your guys' packets as far as all of the data that I was able to pull from MyGov for quarterly for 2025 as well as yearly. We've published that before. It was from 2021 to 2024, but I've reviewed the majority of the material from 25, so it's on there as well. And then the last two is a little more of the engagement expansion and vacant property, how we can redevelop partnership with that. So exploring new partners for challenged LMI owners. I know Carrie, they have their major grant. I don't know if that's going to be renewed, but we had kind of talked about exploring creative ways to make sure that we're partnering with those challenged LMI owners. And then Leo, again, he would be that community navigator, so encouraging and supporting volunteers in neighborhood initiated programs. And then I know Leah was here today. She's kind of started to get her feet wet into the vacant properties. What does that look like for redevelopment? As far as how do we take a look at maybe small developers, creating some sort of sheets for them, settling on redevelopment strategies, exploring creative ways to use the tax sale. So I know that she was involved with that last year, so I think she was really well placed as a main contact for that. But this is, like I said, just kind of an overview. You had created more of that 15-page document that goes in depth as far as those different points, and which was the second part of your packet then.
Yeah, I'll pick up and just run through some points in the bigger document just to follow up. If you go to page 1 of the longer document, it does mention that the work that was done from last year was built not only on the Karen Black study and all the original input that was done back in 2020 and 2021 to create this initiative, as well as a fair amount of input, at least 30 people writing letters and coming to sessions that were in, particularly in December, about where we are and where we needed to go. Again, primary goal, health and safety for the public down there near the bottom of page 1. And then we want standards and a system that the public feels are reasonable. I'm just going to touch on some of these points and truthfully encourage everyone to read all the way through. The core of what we're doing is what do we agree the minimum standards are that people should have. So making sure that we've got a good system. I mentioned, I think, on page 2, there's a section on fines and fee strategies. I touched on that a little earlier. We realized that even though the fines and fees are there both to help cover some of the expenses that the city government is, the time that the city government's putting into it, also was intended to be a deterrent about being a repeat offender, that we still had some work to do to have a system. And I'm not personally, as chair yet, sure exactly what we're planning to do this year. So there will be time to, in the specific sections, to talk about that. A little farther down on page 2, it mentions the fire, property maintenance, and police department cross-check system. We felt like that was, with some of the concerns we'd had, you know, anything from somebody tearing off a sign off the front door that said that a property couldn't be occupied, all the way to having homeless people, or having had a fire, or having had whatever, that cross-check was going to be one of the most valuable things we could put in place this year for the safety of the neighbors, safety of anybody from any city department going out to try and work on a property, and also the best results. A little farther down on that page, let's see. It's not mentioned on that list, but something that Nicole has really been working on, and that's part of all of these interdepartmental collaborations, is to hammer down an agreed number on how many rental properties we have and how many vacant properties we have, because there have been different numbers from that housing study from 2020 all the way through a variety of different reports. And so collaboratively amongst the city departments, there's a commitment to come up with one number and one shared database. And we have a really great GIS team, so that's really good. At the bottom of page 2, the progression to full enforcement of vegetation has been a priority throughout this. It will happen this year. But with all the other things that are going on, there was a decision within the team that was not going to be a major push and with the publicity, but instead there were a lot of other things also that we needed to educate and promote. The vegetation will get worked into things like Yard of the Month and neighborhood cleanups and education programs in that way. On page 3, just again, some highlights. Retaliation protection, the city did early in our initiative change its retaliatory protection language. It was really well done. On the other hand, you have to be a tenant in good standing for the city to actually go after money, so that knocked some folks out. In fact, 12 out of 13 that went to the city attorney office, and so we've looked at the fact that the education of landlords and tenants needs to be a real strength for that initiative, as much as having the backup from the state law and various other documents and laws. Public portals, we've already mentioned, available already and will continue to be to check ownership and history of complaints. We've got our proactive PMU fire initiative there. The government-assisted housing is mentioned there, and that you can see that a number of things on this form have a Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, meaning first quarter, second quarter. Carrie should be able to get that first government-assisted housing report for us soon. So we'll watch for that. One of the things that was clarified in the course of the year under landlords is simply to make sure that where you've got an occupied rental, that for the most part people don't get more than 30 days to fix it, since tenants are in place and paying rent, and also minimum times for emergencies, no matter what the situation is. If there's no water, there's no heat, hole in the roof, whatever it would be. Homeowners, the general practice from the department so far has been to do exterior, but to pretty much leave interior inspections alone unless invited. The thought is that would likely not change unless there's something happening inside the house that's causing a health threat to the neighbors, like pests and things like that. So that's That's how that's been before. Commercial business rentals or occupied is included in our property maintenance code, in case people didn't know it. Fire is talking about doing occupancy permits for businesses. That's not part of this initiative, but just a note. And abandoned vehicles, property maintenance is going to get included starting this year. Just a few on page 4, and then we'll wrap up. Vacant properties. Again, we've talked about the data. One of the things, scooting about a third of the way down the page, mothballing is something that we've had an educational pamphlet on for a long time, just to advise owners that want to keep a property vacant, which they have the right to do, how to best do that to preserve the property. Nicole already mentioned talking about under vacant properties, developing the developer roundtables. That's where Leah will come in. That team should meet for the first time, finally, in the next couple of weeks. And I realize that we've missed Dan Warner, who's the planning department head, is online as well. Jason Tryon, who's with Public Works, and Megan Rodecap, who is zoning, are also part of these teams, and so we appreciate what they're contributing as well. Also, for the vacant properties, page 14 of that document is a full page layout of what that team's mission and activities could be and who would be on it in 2026. So, any questions further on that? As far as our slides go, Dan, I think if we've covered slide number 6. So getting to, on number 7, we've touched now on the vacant and rental registry issues. HCCI status, Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala had also asked for. Nicole, you were going to just touch on that a little more clearly?
For the vacant registry?
No, HCCI.
So HCCI has merged with, now that you put me on the spot, I can't remember who it is that they've merged. What is it?
MMI.
Oh, yes, MMI. So they are more of a major corporation. From what I can see, it sounds like they're going to give them maybe a little bit more access with like funding, things like that. I know HCCI has done a lot of really good things for a lot of years. They'd gotten kind of into a position where they had just a limited amount of people, and then obviously working within the funds that they were. So I think that this partnership isn't necessarily meant to disperse HCCI, but just allow them a little bit more of that freedom to do the things that they were already doing without necessarily the fear of having to figure out where maybe more of their funding needed to come from or what kind of resources they could pull from. So it sounds like they are staying as an entity, but they just have that backing of that partnership.
Fair. If I can help finish that report, and then yes. We double-checked with Carrie about the education plans for the year, and the report that we got from her is that they would be doing 10 programs. Of those, 2, which are not yet scheduled as far as I know, would be oriented for tenants and advocates, so working with Topeka tenants or whoever to talk about issues and opportunities. 2 would be for landlords, or working particularly with landlords. All of those, as I understand it, would be public sessions, so people could go to whichever ones they wanted. And then the others 6 are in partnership, which HCCI already has been, with Impact Avenues that the Housing Division is doing. Those are open to the public, and so people can come. Also, they advised us that, they're often, because a tenant-landlord situation is very immediate, they just refer to HCCI by phone and get the counseling that way, which has been traditional. So, yes.
Since they're so integral in the planning that we've been doing over the past several years, I'm requesting that someone from their organization come and give an update at this meeting. On social media, I saw 3 different times where people were saying HCCI is closed. When you look at Google, it says that the office is closed. And I just checked to make sure that that was correct. This happened so suddenly, and I'm sure that it's the best for them. I get it, I got it. That's not even the point. The point is that when that happened, there were over 50 agencies that had no idea that it was happening. So I think that it is our responsibility as the city, and it's their responsibility as a partner with the city to come and sit down and answer some questions.
Agreed.
I think it was to my understanding that they weren't necessarily closed, but that I don't know if they are all working from home now, essentially, so that they
Right.
are more just like of a online type entity rather than
Right.
necessarily having a brick and mortar.
Yeah, and I get that, Nicole, but you shouldn't have to answer questions for them.
Deal. Yeah, we did reach out. I think it's to Teresa, and she was unavailable for this meeting. But we can send her maybe a schedule for like the next meeting, or see what her availability is, maybe to be able to give us kind of just a
Yeah, because we would need to know how much that has increased the staffing, what that means for call times, call back times. Because if we are going to invest promoting HCCI so much on the city dime, then they should be able to provide us the answers and at least get something adjusted on the Google, when you do the search, it has closed. It's not giving you as far as it's closed, but you can still call this number.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's stating it's closed.
Yeah.
Karen,
Yes.
you don't have to let me speak, but I was on the board of HCC. I could probably, if you want to let me explain, I'm going to be real careful about what I say, but that's entirely up to you.
Let's go ahead and hold it. What they need to do is do it right away, though, because that's really confusing. And part of that's some default Google stuff. And part of it is, I don't know what happened with getting their information out in a timely manner. Apparently that was decided back in November, but the word just didn't get out, and I'm not sure. All right, we do need to keep moving on this agenda. Nicole, you went, Dan, we were going to wrap up by 2:30 for sure, and it's 2:18, and we still need to do John's motion. Nicole kind of danced through the marketing and education stuff. If people got an advanced draft of detailed work for those on the committee, got a more robust draft of what, on a month-by-month basis, Dan and Monique Laudet, who was not able to be here today. Monique is with Office of Inclusive Communities. They are more the events people. Dan is more the communication person. I would encourage each person on the committee to please read through that. And if you see anything, we've got enough moving parts that if there's something maybe you think we should highlight a little bit more, or that Dan, we move ahead of something, whatever, that's really open at this point. Dan's been really great, and Monique as well, in terms of getting the word out. What we did was try and make that very robust for this year so that we were constantly getting the word out, including in things like Yard of the Month, information about inspections and standards and so on, so that we were getting attention by doing something fun, but getting information covered.
And that's what, it's the Changing Our Culture of Property Maintenance 2026 Major Events Calendar updated. And that shows as far as what posts those were, if it was going to be kind of like a link, if there was an activity that was listed on there. So that is included. It has all of that.
With that, that's the major events calendar that's referenced. On the Public Health and Safety Committee, you've got a sheet in there with, I had worked with particularly Michelle and Marcus about their availability, and the 1:30 to 3 for the committee meetings worked best for them. You've got a draft schedule there. We were hanging a little bit because we didn't have a room for it, but it turns out we can get the law enforcement center for the rest of the year for that location. That said, there had been some commentary from the Topeka tenants folks that maybe it would be helpful to have a meeting or so in the evening when more people could come. This one really wasn't going to be a public input meeting, but would you like to see us get at least a meeting that's focused on renters of an evening?
Well, sure, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to commit to them that we'll do that, and we can work with everybody on what month that would work. Any other comments on the meeting schedule? We'll get it moving. John has an action item he needs us to address, and so John, let me give that to you.
I do. So when we adopted the 2024 International Property Maintenance Code, we were required to provide input to meet the needs of our community, and that's what the International Property Maintenance Code allows us to do. It allows us to add amendments, right? And one of our amendments that have been troubling through the years is our method of delivery. We have relied mainly on certified mail, followed by maybe first class, door hangers. We've applied educational packets and stickers on doors themselves. But this is becoming extremely costly. Certified mail costs $8.60 every time that we use it. Now,
That was 35 to 40,000 almost.
Yeah,
For the last year that we did that as a whole.
property maintenance creates about 8,000, 9,000 cases a year, so you can do the math, right? So best practice suggests that first-class mail works just as well, and I get a better response from first-class mail. As a matter of fact, the folks that I deal with, when we do serve certified mail, the number one complaint they got is that you made me go to the post office and pick it up, number one. And number two is that when I invoice you for a job that we have to do because you didn't, they complain about the cost of that certified mail. Out of everything, they don't care really that we took all their stuff to the dump or we removed their vehicle. That number one complaint is the certified mail that you charge me for. So I'm asking that the ordinance be amended to reflect that we can use first-class mail as a primary method of delivery in addition to the certified mail. So we're not removing certified mail, it's just that we're adding first class as our primary. And we're also adding email, because our new software allows us to send notices through email. And if you elect to receive it through email, you'll get color photographs, you'll get a better representation of the case, and you get a chance to respond immediately to the inspector. And you guys can create a whole relationship that way. And that's the number one thing that I push forward. And you can ask several members of the audience that if there's one thing that I certainly promote is a healthy relationship. Whether you agree with what we do or not, I need a healthy relationship between both of us. So that's what I'm asking the committee, is to support that change in the ordinance.
Could you address any legal opinions on that or
Sure.
procedural?
I bounced this off of our legal team, Matt Mullen, and our chief prosecutor, Kelly Trussell, and they strongly support it. As a matter of fact, I bounced this off about a year ago, and they suggested that we make the change a year ago, but it has never happened yet. And so now that we have to have this printed through the ICC, the International Code Council, I saw that this change was not made. And before we go ahead with the printing, I'm asking that you guys make this change. And so the printing would be in effect at that point.
So do we need to make a motion, Chair?
Yes.
Then I would make a motion to make the designated change as per Director Chardine.
there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Just again, for discussion purposes, is this a common practice elsewhere or is this new?
No, this is a common practice everywhere. As a matter of fact, when I did the research,
Make sure people knew.
when I brought up the fact, when we go to conferences and that, they asked me, are you serious? You still use certified mail for all legal notices? And I said the entire city does, not just us.
Okay,
So-
just wanted to make sure that for the record, for the committee especially, was there.
I know I've already made the motion to second, but I do have a question. Is it a requirement that we use certified mail, or can it just be by?
It's only a
First class.
requirement because of city ordinance. The state does not require it.
So
So-
this is
we
a part
could-
of International Property Maintenance Code that has a kind of just a really, not necessarily vague, but small portion. This was something that had been created by the city when we drafted the 2012, as far as that method of service. So this was something that we had
It
required.
had been a tradition in the city.
Yeah,
So
it's an old
You're
tradition.
replacing, you're not going to be doing both, or you are going to be doing both.
Well, when it comes to invoices, you have to use certified mail. So I
Okay.
don't want to remove it.
Okay.
I just want to add as
So
first
in that
class.
Tyler system, we're creating that to be an option, but it wouldn't necessarily be a requirement then, that we only do certified mail then from the very beginning for the owner.
All right.
Good question. Any other questions? Conversation? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign? Nobody left? Okay. We will send that forward to the council
Thank you.
with some haste, because you're ready to go. Okay. We'll see how quickly that can go. All right. I already touched on our upcoming meetings. Any further conversation about the Wednesdays, 1:30 to 3, and having at least 1 or 2 evening meetings? If not, we'll have Kara help get that going. Any comments already about the subject matter on the proposed schedule? Any improvements on that? You're welcome to get back with
Yeah.
it later. I think that one is your C tab, yeah. Some of those topics can shift if they need to, but certainly, what we put in there was there'd be updates so that you can have current events,
Bless you.
whatever.
Is public comment typically done in this committee meeting?
Yes.
Okay, we're just not doing it today?
I just didn't have it in today because we had the orientation and I felt like it would probably take the whole time.
If we have people here,
Invite people, is that?
if we have people here for public comment, can we go ahead and do that?
I don't have anywhere.
I don't have anywhere to go, so.
I'm supposed to be someplace at
Oh.
3. That's why we had to move the meeting up half an hour. Can people at least, let's take a lightning round anyway. How many people wanted to speak today? 1, 2, 3, 4.
But I can delay, rather than go ahead and vote, so.
Let's go. Come on, and use this chair up here if we
Yeah.
can keep it to, just pretty short.
Is this already on?
Yes.
Sir.
All right. I'll try to be fast. I understand you guys are tight on time.
Do you want to say who you are?
Yeah. My name is Jonathan Smith. Today I'm here on behalf of Topeka Tenants. Good afternoon, members of the Public Health and Safety Committee. Topeka Tenants formally endorses a landlord registry and tenant protection proposals that would include many benefits for both tenants and landlords, thus creating social safety nets for vulnerable populations on both sides. Ultimately, we believe a landlord registry will result in a safer and more inviting city. We have compiled a list of several key recommendations that we would support. Just to fire off a few of them real quick. requiring a local registered agent, a formal repair timeline and enforcement rubric, a formal maintenance problem escalation system or portal, a mandatory tenant rights brochure, rental operating licenses for landlords, publicly accessible bad actor registry, civil fines, and small landlord rehabilitation services or programs. There is currently a large power imbalance between tenants and landlords in Topeka. We have spoken with many tenants who have dealt with unsafe housing, who are not getting quality repairs in a timely fashion, and who have not been provided with the amenities and appliances, included within their rental agreements. A consistent issue we have seen is that many tenants do not know who to contact when there is a maintenance issue emergency due to landlord obfuscation. These policies would increase public knowledge of tenant rights and proper procedures for habitability enforcement. Tenants deserve safe housing, and the City of Topeka should ensure that landlords adhere to the minimum habitability guidelines. Landlords can also benefit from these proposed ideas, such as the landlord training and potentially a grant or subsidy if prioritized. Landlords have come to our informational Topeka Tenants meetings, and there they explain that they also do not receive a full introduction to what their responsibilities are as a landlord, and that they would also want the guidance to be the best managers of Topeka property that they can be. This is a vital step in making Topeka a place that draws new residents in instead of driving them away. We could be a model for the whole state on how to develop a culture of property maintenance that reflects our highest community values as Topekans. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would
This
you
is
like
my
me to hang
personal
out?
opinion only,
Yeah.
but I think it's wonderful.
Sure.
So it'll be good to see. I mean, what you did was listed the kind of standards, what we want, and that's, to me, and what I was trying to say earlier, how we have to best structure coming up with where we want to go. You know, whether we've got it or whether we don't yet, and how to get it.
Sure.
So it's great. Thank you. Next.
Hi, my name is Braden Kerwick. I'm also on behalf of Topeka Tenants as well as Shawnee County Young Democrats. And I just wanted to reinforce what Jonathan said. As someone who has lived in rented properties my whole life, who has survived carbon monoxide poisoning as a child, and who has had to deal with landlords that don't act quick enough to address issues like mold until someone like a health inspector gets involved, that I do want to reinforce the idea of any landlord registry, and to also say that something I've also learned in working with misfit juvenile convicts in my experience of corrections, I've learned the hard way that if your law, rule, boundary, etc. does not have any real world consequence, it may as well not exist. And so while I do believe in consequences that take context into account, I do also believe that it can't just be tenants repeatedly bringing up the same maintenance orders with no action whatsoever for months on end. Thank you.
Thank you.
Danielle Twemlow, thank you. I just want to start off by, stating that public meetings really aren't a time and place for orientation when there's far more pressing things to do. And I'm a little bit frustrated because we sat here January 15th of 2025 and I replayed the recording of Public Health and Safety where it was discussed that we aren't aware of all the properties that we have to inspect within our community. We have not been enforcing things such as specific code things because of the cost, not code, but even fire things, that because of the cost it would take to these multifamily property landlords, that we're being mindful of them. And I'm not quite sure how we are spending so much time comparing to the cost of people who are who have multi-million dollars worth of properties what that expense will be when it is literally costing lives. At this point in 2025, at that January 15th meeting, there was a discussion that ended up happening that had to do with property revolved around Western. That conversation specifically was brought up because of problematic property and a problematic property owner with a specific multifamily unit that then caught on fire and someone died recently. This property alone has 102 units, many of them that are vacant. And in the past year alone have had 44 evictions at our, that have been turned in because we do not hold accountability measures. So I'm really at the point where after that meeting, I walked up to our attorney, and I know I walked up to people within this committee and stated that we had to take action because people's lives are on the line. Within the last week, we have also had, just down the street from this same property, a multifamily unit that had 48 hours to evict everyone with awful conditions. There, in both of these cases, have been 2 years of constant going back and going back and going back, not to the fault of code or fire, because we have not built a foundation that allows them to understand and keep track and know the properties that they need to be going to, have a system of accountability that they can then enforce to these problematic property owners, and then in turn be able to assist others who are doing the right thing, because we have not built the foundation and structure, because we have spent the last 2 years talking about mowing, and I'm done with that. I think there are many opportunities to look at things that are happening across the entire state and other communities that we have to then prioritize. And if we don't prioritize, now having multifamily units with evictions, when I pulled up the open case list, there's over 100 and some odd house condemnations on this open case list. We are not focusing on the right things with our attention and energy. So at this point, I would state that the things that we do have in place that we say we're already doing are inadequate. I can go and copy and paste the name of a location, and while I can see that there's an open case, I have no information about that. I do not have information about who owns that without going to separate websites and then exactly putting in the right words, not even the name of the place, but the exact right words to find the information. It is inadequate. And we have to take time to focus on this before more lives are lost. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Steve?
I'm Steve Vogel. I'm the president of the Shawnee County Landlords Association. I've probably got a little bit different take on all these issues than some of the previous speakers did. But I want to find out more about what this rental registry is. I'm going to see, unless you can promise me here that I'll get a copy of the proposal, I think I'll probably contact Carrie to see if I can get one. But there's a few things. I get my share, believe me, of people that complaining about, the landlord won't fix this or fix that. I'm always consistent. I always tell them to call code enforcement. And from what I have heard previously, I think a big, big problem is that people are reluctant. Tenants are reluctant to report this for whatever reason. I'm sure they have their own good reasons, but I think that's something that should be addressed by these folks here. Because from what I've heard, I think that code does a pretty good job of coming out. Often they don't even need to come out. And let's see. I've also I want to find out more about what this rental registry is, because if it's going to involve costs that are going to be passed on the landlord, very, very important. how are you going to deal with non-compliance? Okay, on anything that you propose. Because obviously, for the past, I'm gonna say 8 years, not 2 years or 3 years, 8 years, some of the worst multifamily property owners have just flouted the law. And we had a really good discussion at the last PH&S meeting where I got into a real good back and forth with Kelly Trussell, and I think John was involved in that, where the penalties are there now in the current ordinances that we have to deal with this, and those include jail time, and it's not been used. I think these property owners, these big property owners, obviously look at the fees and fines that are currently being assessed as just the cost of doing business. So it's not doing any good. So I look forward to more discussions, and I agree strongly with some of the other people. This is not really the place to do that. But then, thank you.
Thank you. We know we're not there yet. We know we've got some good things working, and I'm going to try and nail it this year. So, feedback mutually on ideas and what our goals are. I think that everything I've heard all along is that the goals are the same. And so we have to figure out how to get there. We're not there yet. We've done the best we could to bring forward the lessons learned, get rid of some stuff that didn't work, make it work better. Staff has worked hard at it. The feedback matters. Anything else?
I don't have anything else.
Anybody else?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
In touch. We all want the same thing.
Is the meeting adjourned?
Yes, the meeting is adjourned.